posted in my community that I was about to film a thrift flip crop top video and was so confused what kind of tops you guys wanted to see. Some of you guys suggested many ideas, also reached out on my Instagram DM, and shout out to Cassandra. I really liked the idea of recreating Shein tops, and that's what we are going to do today. So the first top I'm going to recreate is this ruched drawstring cami top, for which I'm going to use this yellow t-shirt that I just got for $2 from the thrift store. So starting off, I'm marking 11 inches, which is going to be the length of the top. Connecting the dots and drawing a line about 15 inches long, and also connecting it to the bottom like a rectangle shape, and going to cut it out. Next, I'm folding the piece in half and going to cut a slight diagonal line near the edges so the top hugs the body really well and it's not loose near the waist area, something I like to do to all my top, which you may already know. Moving on, I'm going to take one of the piece and folding the top edges and adding pins for hemming. Also doing the same to the other piece, folding it twice, taking about a centimeter each and adding some pins near the edges. And once done adding the pins, I'm going to sew them using a straight stitch. Now back to the t-shirt, I'm going to cut out long pieces for my straps and I'm taking about 1 inch for width. And I'm also going to need 2 other bigger pieces for which I'm taking 2 inches as width. Now once I have all the pieces cut out and ready for the machine, I'm joining the small straps together using straight stitch. And I need about 4 long straps, so I had to go and cut out some extra pieces so that I have 4 long straps about 40 inches long each. Now once it's all joined, I'm folding the edges towards each other and sewing it using a straight stitch. Next, I'm going to add the 2 big pieces to one of the body piece that we have for the top. I'm going to add them about 2.5 inches away from the edges on both the sides of the top. And I'm going to sew 3 straight lines, 1 in the middle and 2 on the sides near the extreme edges using straight stitch. So what this will do is this will create 2 tunnels for our straps. Now I had to repeat the same exact steps with the other piece, and this is what it should look like once you're done. Next, sew the front and the back piece together, both wrong side out, about a centimeter away from the edges. And I like to go twice with my stitch just to make sure it's nice and secure, as the top is going to stretch while wearing and you don't want the threads coming out. Now to add the straps, I'm marking 4 inches from the side seam on the back side of the top and placing 2 straps like the edges near the seam line and going to sew them using a straight stitch. Again, I like to go back and forth about 2 to 3 times to make sure it's nice and secure. And once the straps are all added to the back of the top, I'm using safety pin to the edges of the straps so I can easily pass through the tunnel. And once you have all the straps passed through all the 4 tunnels, you should have your first Shein top recreation ready. Now I know all the Shein tops are very affordable. You might think it's easier to buy one, but if you already have a spare t-shirt at home that you don't wear anymore, it's a good way to put it in use. Plus you are learning something new and getting a new top at the same time. So talk about the real winner here. Now moving on to the rest of the t-shirt, we are going to recreate this lettuce trim Bardot tee, for which I'm marking 6 inches on the sleeves at the top, and then I'm trying to trace the rest of the shape and going to cut it out. And also going to use the piece to trace on the other sleeve and going to cut it out as well. Now for the body of the top, I'm marking 10 inches as the length of the top and connecting the marks, drawing a straight line. Now to cut the piece out, I'm starting to cut from one corner and connecting it to the top in a diagonal line. Also cutting through the top and going from top to bottom corner, connecting it in a diagonal line. Next, place the narrow side to the bottom and measure the top. It's about 20 inches, but my bust all around is about 34 inches, so I will need to add a little more fabric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this bit to trace and cut out another piece, which is about 10 inches, which will make it about 30 inches together. And don't forget, it's going to stretch a little bit, so make sure to take a few inches lesser than your actual measurement. Moving on, I'm going to join the pieces together so I can add some pins. Matching the edges together and going to sew them using straight stitch. Once the pieces are all joined and turned into a tube top, I'm going to lettuce hem the bottom edges of the top, for which all I'm going to do is fold the edges twice. Now here, make sure your fold is as teeny tiny as possible and then do a zigzag stitch. Remember, I always tell to not pull the fabric while sewing, especially if it's stretchy fabric, as it's going to create lattice edges. So here we are going to do the exact opposite because we need lattice edges here. So pull the fabric as you go and it should create a nice and beautiful lattice hem throughout the edges. Moving on to the sleeves, I'm marking 4.5 inches on both the top and bottom of the sleeves and connecting the lines, drawing a straight line, and also going to trim off the excess. Also trimming out the hemline as we are not going to need them. Next, I'm placing the sleeves over the top and going to trim a slight diagonal line so we can add the sleeves to the body. Once the sleeves are ready, I'm first going to lattice hem the bottom edges of the sleeves. Also going to sew the edges together using a straight stitch. Once both the sleeves are ready, I'm placing the top right side up and one of the sleeves wrong side up and sewing the edges together, matching the triangles using a straight stitch. This will connect the sleeve and the top together. Lastly, all you need to do is hem the top from one side to the other, starting from the sleeves. And here we are going to lettuce hem the edges as well. Once you are done hemming all around, your super cute lettuce hem crop top should be ready. I so love this top, how this turned out. It's cute and I think you should absolutely try it. And also because it just took me about an hour, way quicker than I thought it would take. Plus it's very easy, beginner friendly. Make sure to DM me pictures if you recreate one. I love to see them. Now for the next one, Lola reached out to me on my Facebook page and wanted me to recreate this Mandarin Collar top with cutout front. And honestly, I really liked the idea, so I went ahead and looked for it on Shein, and this is what I found, which works perfect for this video. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, I'm drawing a straight line starting from one armhole bottom to the other and going to trim off the excess. Next, I'm going to use an old dress to trace the top, so I placed it in a way that I can trace it on one side near the edges. Folded the sleeves so that I can trace the armhole nicely, and then going to the waistline, following the bust, and also to the top from one shoulder to the other. Next, I'm trimming off the excess following the lines on one side, and then also the neckline. Also folding it in half so I can trace the other side and make sure it's symmetrical. Next, I'm leaving one bit of the fabric from the two and going to use a container lid to create the circle, which is going to be the front of the top. I'm making sure it's right near the middle and then drawing out the circle. Next, of course, you need to cut it out, but don't forget to add some seam allowance like I did. Don't just cut it right above the circle, but leave about a centimeter or two. Next, I'm trying to create small slits all around the circle, which will make it easier to fold the circle nice and clean without leaving any unwanted folds or wrinkles. Now, because stretchy fabric can be really challenging to sew, especially in a circle, I decided to add some glue first just to be safe. So I added some fabric glue all around the circle in dots. Also, don't hesitate to rub it off with some tissue paper to make sure it's all evenly spread out. And also because we always end up applying way more at first, so it kind of helps. Next, I decided to add some pins to keep the folds safe while I wait for it to dry, but I think small clamps will work way better as my pins were sticking with the fabric and was creating a lot of mess once it was dry, and it was really hard to pull them out. Anyways, I got them worked at the end somehow, and I left it for about half an hour to dry and sewed it all around using a straight stitch. Now, to make sure you won't come out the line while sewing a circle, the trick is to go very slow and sew little by little and turn the fabric around as you go. And by doing this, you can achieve a nice stitch line around your circle without making your stitch slip from here and there. Next, for the sleeves, I'm marking 5 inches and then slight diagonal line and cutting it out as usual, as I do to all the other sleeves, and also using it to trace and cut out the other sleeve. And once I have both the sleeves cut out, I am going to add it to the body, both wrong side up, and adding some pins to make sure it won't move around while sewing, and going to sew them using a straight stitch. Also going to sew the side edges along with the sleeves using a straight stitch. Now, to know the length of the collar, I had to measure the neck area, and it's about 13.5 inches long. So I'm marking 13.5 inches as length and also marking 3 inches as width. And going to cut out the rectangle. Once I have the piece cut out, I'm folding it in half and cutting out the bottom corners a little bit so the collar doesn't turn out sharp rectangular box. And also going to sew it near the edges, leaving about an inch or two open so that I can flip the inside out. Next, I'm going to join the collar to the top. So I'm starting from one side to the other. And here I'm using a zigzag stitch. Now, to hold the collar together, I decided to add a button on one side of the collar. So all I'm doing is first tying knots to make the edges of my thread secure. I'm running through the needle back and forth a few times. You want to make sure the button holds in, so make sure it's nice and tight. I also decided to add some elastic on the other side of the collar. You can also use some embroidery thread or literally any thread that's thicker than the normal usual thread. And I'm keeping the elastic about 4 inches long and going to make it like a loop on the other edge of the collar and just sewing it back and forth a few times. And once done sewing, make sure to tie some knots to secure the stitches. And there we have our cute black top with Mandarin collar and front cut out. Honestly, I like how it turned out, but if I was to remake this top again, number one, I would cut the circle a little lower so that it's little away from the collar and you can see the full circle. And number two, I would add more seam allowance. I guess I forgot there's a limit of the fabric to stretch, and so it turned out a little smaller for my liking, but overall I would definitely love to make another one so that I can actually wear it outside. Moving on to the last top, I'm going to recreate this puff sleeve top but with longer sleeves, for which I'm going to use this loose maxi dress that I thrifted a while back. And because the dress is so long, I'm going to start from the bottom. Using a tank top to trace the shape, I'm adding some pins all around and going to trace on one side as usual and drawing a straight line at the top, also tracing the neckline and then going to cut it out. Next, I'm folding the piece in half so I can trace the other side. That way I can make sure it's symmetrical. Next, I'm only going to work with one piece first, cutting out the neckline, which is about 5.5 inches. And this is going to be the back of our top. Also going to trace the width for the second piece. Going to mark 7 inches for the depth of the neck and drawing a straight line on both the sides, creating a rectangle. And I'm cutting it out following the lines, which is going to be the front of our top. Next, placing both the front and the back pieces wrong side out, adding pins to the shoulder and going to sew it using a straight stitch. Also going to hem the neckline all around both the front and the back using a zigzag stitch. Now for the sleeves, as I already have a semicircle cut out from the armhole of the top, I'm dividing it in half, which is about 4.5 inches, and I'm marking it out with a small line. Next, I'm going to mark 25 centimeter on one side and draw a straight line so I can trim off the excess. Next, folding the pieces in half and tracing the other side and cutting it out. Here we have our puff sleeve ready, but just going to cut the piece in half so that we have 2 sleeves. This is how a puff sleeve pattern normally looks like, but the bigger the circle is, the puffier your sleeves will turn out. So make sure you work with it how you need the sleeves. Next, laying the top flat with the wrong side up and going to pin out the sleeves near the edges. So I'm starting from the middle so I can create some folds, which is going to give you that puffy effect. Now here, know that this is a trial and error process, so make sure you give time. And I was just able to create 3 folds before running out of the fabric. As I said, you can make the sleeves bigger depending on how puffier you want it. I went ahead and added pins to the rest of the sleeves and going to sew them using a straight stitch. Next, I'm marking 5.5 inches on the sleeves and then connecting it to the bottom of the armhole in a diagonal line and trimming off the excess. So lastly, all I'm going to do is sew along the edges using a straight stitch. And there we have our puff sleeve top ready. Honestly, I would love to remake it with more puffier sleeves, so I might go ahead and redo the sleeves with the same top. But apart from that, I really like how it turned out with like the square neck and the collar and also the woven fabric. Let me know which one was your favorite and DM me pics if you recreate any. Don't forget to like this video if you want to see more, and I will see you guys next time. Bye guys.